I'm Haley, 28 years old, and I never thought a benign brain tumor would show me who truly cared. My family promised they'd be there after my surgery, but when I woke up groggy and alone, not one of them answered my calls. Just as despair overwhelmed me, an unexpected savior walked through the door, someone from my past. The panic in my family's voices when they discovered who had stepped up in their absence. Absolutely priceless. Before I dive into this journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button to join me through this unexpected twist of fate that changed everything. Before the diagnosis that would change everything, my life in Chicago had been exactly what I'd worked for. At 28, I'd climbed to senior marketing manager at a respected firm, had my own apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, and maintained what I thought was a solid relationship with my family despite the distance that had grown between us. Growing up in suburban Milwaukee, I'd been close with my parents, Margaret and Richard, and my sister Amber. Family dinners, holiday traditions, summer vacations to the lake house, we had all the trappings of the perfect American family. My mother was a high school English teacher, always pushing us to excel academically. My father worked in insurance, providing a comfortable life while reminding us of the importance of financial stability. Amber, 2 years younger than me, had always been the social butterfly, the one who brought friends home constantly while I buried myself in books and projects. Things began changing when I left for college in Chicago. I pursued marketing while Amber stayed closer to home, married her high school sweetheart Tyler at 22, and quickly had 2 children, Emma and Jackson. My parents seamlessly transitioned to their grandparent roles, with my mother retiring early to help with childcare, and my father adjusting his work schedule to never miss a soccer game or dance recital. Meanwhile, I built my career in Chicago, dating occasionally, but focusing primarily on professional growth. Our family dynamic shifted subtly but noticeably. Holiday conversations centered around Amber's children. My parents' social media became shrines to their grandparenting adventures. My achievements at work warranted brief congratulations before the topic returned to the grandchildren's latest milestones. I accepted this as normal family evolution. After all, babies are more exciting than marketing campaigns. I never felt entitled to equal attention, but I did assume that in times of genuine need, my family would still be there for me. The first sign something was wrong came during a presentation to clients. Words on my PowerPoint suddenly blurred, and a splitting headache forced me to excuse myself. I attributed it to stress and exhaustion. When it happened again a week later, accompanied by a strange tingling in my right hand, I reluctantly scheduled a doctor's appointment. "Just to rule things out," Dr. Patterson said as she ordered an MRI. Her calm demeanor didn't prepare me for the call that came 3 days later. "We found something we need to discuss in person," she said, her professional tone betraying nothing. Sitting in her office the next morning, I stared blankly at the scan images as she explained the small mass nestled in my frontal lobe. "The good news is it appears benign, and its location is favorable for surgery," she explained. "But we need to remove it soon before it grows and creates more pressure." I nodded mechanically, asking questions about recovery times and success rates, while my mind raced ahead to logistics. I would need help. For the first time in years, I would need to lean on my family. I called my mother that evening, trying to sound calm as I explained the diagnosis. Her initial gasp and "Oh my God," Haley, felt reassuring, the maternal concern I needed. "I'll need to schedule surgery within the next 2 weeks," I explained. "The recovery will require someone to stay with me for at least the first few days." "I know it's asking a lot, but—" Of course, my mother interrupted. "We'll figure something out. Let me talk to your father and Amber. This is serious." That conversation gave me hope. I scheduled the surgery for the following Thursday, giving everyone time to arrange their schedules. When I called back to confirm details, my mother seemed distracted. Thursday might be difficult, she hedged. Amber has that fundraising committee for Emma's school, and your father and I promised to watch Jackson. Mom, it's brain surgery, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. I know, honey. We'll work something out. Maybe we can come the day after. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. They were supportive in theory, but vague on specifics. My father suggested I reschedule for the following month when their calendar was clearer. Amber called to express concern, but quickly turned the conversation to her own stress about the school fundraiser she was chairing. As surgery approached, I found myself handling all the preparations alone. I arranged for a medical leave from work, stocked my apartment with easy-to-prepare foods, and researched recovery tips online. The hospital repeatedly emphasized I would need someone to pick me up after surgery. Hospital policy would not allow me to leave alone or take a rideshare after anesthesia for brain surgery. Don't worry, my mother assured me the night before. We'll be there. We might be a little late because of Amber's committee meeting, but we'll definitely be there. I believed her. Despite the growing evidence to the contrary, I couldn't imagine my family would actually leave me alone after brain surgery. They were busy, yes. Distracted by Amber's family needs, certainly. But they wouldn't abandon me during the most frightening medical crisis of my life. I was wrong. The morning of the surgery arrived with a grey drizzle that matched my mood. My alarm blared at 5 a.m., though I'd barely slept. I showered with the special antimicrobial soap the hospital had provided, careful to avoid wetting my hair since they'd be shaving part of it anyway. The thought made me queasy, but it seemed trivial compared to what would follow. I sent a group text to my family, heading to the hospital now. Surgery scheduled for 8 a.m. Should take about 4 hours, then recovery. Doctor says I should be discharged around 5 p.m. if all goes well. My mother replied first, praying for you, honey. We'll be there. My father added a thumbs-up emoji, his typical laconic response. Amber sent a gif of a teddy bear holding a heart. These digital assurances provided some comfort as I called a rideshare to the hospital. At Northwestern Memorial, the admitting nurse guided me through a maze of forms and wristbands. Who will be picking you up after surgery? She asked, her pen poised over the form. My parents, I answered, ignoring the slight uncertainty in my gut. They are driving down from Milwaukee. The pre-op room was a flurry of activity. A nurse inserted N4 while another checked my vitals. An anesthesiologist explained the sedation process. Dr. Abrams, my neurosurgeon, stopped by to review the procedure one last time, his confidence reassuring. Any questions before we get started? He asked. I had dozens, but only one mattered. How soon until I'm me again? He smiled kindly. The surgery itself won't change who you are, Haley. You might be foggy for a day or two, and you'll need to take it easy for several weeks, but this type of tumor removal typically has excellent outcomes. You've caught this early, and that's the most important thing. As they prepared to wheel me to the operating room, I checked my phone one last time. No new messages from my family. I sent another text, going in now. See you this afternoon. The operating room was colder than I expected, blindingly bright under sterile lights. Someone placed a heated blanket over me as the anesthesiologist leaned into my field of vision. I'm going to give you something to relax now, she said, injecting something into my fore. My last conscious thought was wondering if my family was already on their way from Milwaukee. The return to consciousness was gradual and disorienting. Beeping monitors. Hushed voices. A rhythmic whooshing sound. My mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton, and a dull throbbing emanated from the right side of my head. "Haley. Can you hear me?" A nurse's face came into focus, her expression professionally cheerful. "Surgery's all done. You're in recovery now." I tried to speak, but managed only a croak. She offered ice chips, which felt like heaven against my parched lips. "Everything went well," she continued, checking my vitals. "Dr. Abrams was able to remove the entire tumor. You're going to be just fine." The recovery room was a hazy blur of nurses checking pupils, asking questions to test my cognition, and administering pain medication. Gradually, the fog began to lift. By mid-afternoon, I was transferred to a regular room, able to hold brief conversations and even scroll through my phone. That's when I realized no one had contacted me. No texts asking how the surgery went. No calls the nurses might have answered. Nothing. I sent a message to the family group chat, "Out of surgery. Everything went well. In room 412 now." Minutes ticked by. No response. An hour later, I tried again. "Anyone know what time you'll be here?" "Hospital says I need escort to be discharged." The three dots appeared, showing someone was typing, then disappeared. Still no response. By 4 p.m., anxiety was building in my chest. The discharge nurse had already visited, explaining I could leave once my designated caretaker arrived. "They're on their way," I'd assured her, with a confidence I no longer felt. At 4:30 p.m., I called my mother's cell. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried my father. Same result. I texted Amber directly, "Are you guys coming? Hospital won't let me leave alone." At 4:45 p.m., my phone finally rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen, and relief washed over me. "Mom. Where are you guys? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "Oh honey," her voice had that distinct tone I recognized from childhood disappointments. "I'm so sorry, but we've hit a bit of a snag." The snag, as she explained, was that Amber's fundraiser meeting had run long, and there was a crisis with the venue. My father had taken Jackson to an emergency dental appointment after he'd fallen at soccer practice. Everything was just so hectic. "Can't you just take an Uber home?" she suggested. "We'll come first thing tomorrow morning instead." The casual dismissal of my situation, having just undergone brain surgery, struck me like a physical blow. "Mom, they won't let me leave without someone to escort me home. It's hospital policy after brain surgery. I told you this multiple times." "Well, that seems excessive," she huffed. "You're a grown woman." Tears of frustration burned my eyes. It's not about being grown. It's about medical safety. I just had my skull opened. An uncomfortable silence followed. Then, "Let me see if Mrs. Friedman next door could drive down." "Mrs. Friedman? Your 80-year-old neighbor, who can barely see over the steering wheel." My voice rose despite the pain it caused in my head. "This isn't a favor you ask a neighbor. This is brain surgery." Another silence. "I'm sorry, Haley. It's just very difficult timing with everything going on here." The call ended with vague promises to figure something out, but the reality crashed down on me like a wave. No one was coming. My family, the people I'd counted on my entire life, had decided that a school fundraiser and a child's routine dental appointment took precedence over being there after my brain surgery. I curled onto my side in the hospital bed, mindful of the IV and the bandages on my head, and let the tears come. A deep, hollow ache spread through my chest that had nothing to do with surgical pain. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. The discharge nurse returned at 5:15 p.m., concern evident on her face. Your ride isn't here yet. I shook my head, unable to form the words to explain that no one was coming. We can't discharge you without an escort, she explained gently. If no one can come tonight, we'll need to keep you overnight, though insurance might not cover it since medically you're clear for discharge. Great. Now I'd have financial stress on top of everything else. As I stared at my phone, desperate for a solution, a text from 2 days ago caught my eye. It was from Jason, my college boyfriend. We'd dated for 3 years before career paths pulled us in different directions, he to an architecture firm in New York, me to marketing in Chicago. We'd broken up 5 years ago, but maintained occasional contact through social media likes and birthday texts. He'd seen my post about the upcoming surgery and reached out, "Hey Haley, just saw your post. Brain surgery sounds scary as hell. Wishing you all the best. Let me know if you need anything." At the time, I'd sent a polite thanks, never imagining I'd actually need to take him up on the offer. But now, staring at those words, "Let me know if you need anything," they seemed like a lifeline. What did I have to lose? My family had already abandoned me. The worst Jason could do was say no. With trembling fingers, I called his number, praying he hadn't changed it in the 5 years since we'd been together. The phone rang 3 times, each tone increasing my certainty that this was a desperate, foolish move. What kind of person calls an ex-boyfriend they haven't seen in 5 years to pick them up from brain surgery? Haley. Jason's voice came through, warm with surprise. Hey. How are you? Did the surgery go okay? His genuine concern nearly broke me. I tried to sound composed, but my voice cracked. The surgery went fine, but I'm stuck at Northwestern Memorial. My family, they didn't come. The hospital won't discharge me without someone to escort me home, and I don't know who else to call. The silence that followed felt eternal. Text me the hospital address and your room number, he finally said, his tone shifting from surprise to determination. I'll be there as soon as I can. Relief flooded through me. Are you sure? I know it's a lot to ask. I'm sure. I'm in my car in about 2 minutes. I'd forgotten that Jason had moved back to Chicago about a year ago. I'd seen something about it on LinkedIn, but hadn't reached out. Now, I sent up silent thanks for whatever twist of fate had brought him back to the same city. Thank you, I whispered, unable to manage more without breaking down entirely. Hang tight. I'll be there soon. After hanging up, I informed the nurse that someone was coming. She seemed skeptical, probably assuming I was just stalling, but nodded professionally. The next 90 minutes were the longest of my life. I alternated between watching the door and checking my phone, half expecting Jason to text with an excuse about why he couldn't make it after all. My family still hadn't responded to my last message. Just as I was sinking into certainty that I'd been abandoned twice in one day, a knock came at the door. And there stood Jason. 5 years had treated him well. His dark hair was shorter and more professionally styled than the shaggy look he'd sported in college. He'd filled out his lean frame with what looked like regular gym visits, and he wore a well-tailored navy suit, presumably having come straight from work. But his eyes, those warm hazel eyes that had once known me better than anyone, were exactly the same. Hey, Haley, he said softly, taking in the sight of me with my partially shaved head covered in bandages, hospital gown, and undoubtedly pale, tear-streaked face. You actually came, I said, my voice small with disbelief. He stepped into the room, setting down a small duffel bag I hadn't noticed at first. Of course I came. You needed help. No judgment in his voice. No questions about why my own family wasn't there. Just simple, straightforward support that made my throat tighten with emotion. The discharge nurse appeared behind him, surprised but visibly relieved. "Are you the escort for Ms. Wilson?" Jason turned, extending his hand. "Yes, Jason Bennett. I'm taking Haley home." "Wonderful. I'll get the discharge paperwork started." Ms. Wilson, do you want to change into your clothes while I prepare everything? Jason stepped out while I changed into the comfortable clothes I'd packed, moving slowly to accommodate my dizziness and the foreport still in my arm. When the nurse returned, she removed the port, reviewed my discharge instructions, and handed me prescriptions for pain medication and anti-seizure medication as a precaution. "Someone should stay with you tonight," she instructed, looking at Jason. "She'll need help with medications, and you should wake her every few hours to ensure there are no complications." Jason nodded seriously, absorbing all the instructions with the same focused attention he used to give his architecture professors. "I'll take care of everything." The wheelchair ride to the exit felt surreal. Jason walked beside me, carrying my bag and the folder of medical instructions. Outside, he asked me to wait while he brought his car around, the sleek black Audi that was a significant upgrade from the beat-up Honda Civic he'd driven in college. He helped me into the passenger seat with careful hands, making sure my head didn't bump the door frame. Once I was settled, he placed my bag in the back seat and circled to the driver's side. "I brought some essentials," he said, gesturing to the duffel bag. "Wasn't sure what you'd need, but I grabbed some extra pillows to make the ride more comfortable, water bottles, and a few other things." The thoughtfulness of this gesture, from someone who owed me nothing compared to my family's absence, was almost too much to bear. I turned toward the window, hoping he wouldn't notice the fresh tears. As we pulled away from the hospital, the reality of what had happened today began to sink in. My family had abandoned me when I needed them most. And the person who had stepped up was someone I'd once loved and lost, someone who had no obligation to help me, but had dropped everything to come to my rescue. The world as I understood it had been turned completely upside down. And the journey home with Jason was just the beginning. The Chicago evening traffic moved at a crawl, but I was grateful for Jason's careful driving. Each small bump or sudden stop sent waves of pain through my head, despite the medication. Jason seemed to sense this, slowing well before red lights and avoiding lane changes whenever possible. An awkward silence filled the car for the first few minutes. What do you say to an ex-boyfriend who's just rescued you from one of the most humiliating moments of your life? So, Jason finally ventured, keeping his eyes on the road. "Architecture firm treating you well?" The normalcy of the question was a relief. "It's good. I made partner last year, actually." "That's amazing, Jason. Congratulations." "Thanks. It was a surprise, honestly. Youngest partner in the firm's history." He said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. "Not a surprise to me. You were always brilliant." The words slipped out before I could censor them, too close to the admiration I'd once openly expressed. He smiled slightly, glancing my way. "And you? Still conquering the marketing world. Senior manager at Abbott and Richards now. It's a good company, creative freedom, decent work-life balance. Always knew you'd be successful." The small talk continued as we inched through traffic, catching up on surface-level life updates. I learned he'd moved back to Chicago a year ago, when his firm opened a branch office and needed a partner to head it up. He'd bought a condo in River North. He had a golden retriever named Cooper. I told him about my Lakeview apartment, my recent promotion, the travel I'd done for work. Safe topics. Normal conversations. As if he were just an old friend giving me a ride, not my emergency savior after my family's betrayal. But the elephant in the car grew larger with each passing mile. Finally, as we turned onto Lakeshore Drive, Jason asked the question I'd been dreading. Haley, I'm not trying to pry, but where's your family? I remember how close you were with them. I stared out at Lake Michigan, the water gray under the cloudy sky. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? They said they were coming, I began, my voice small. But then there was my sister Amber's school fundraiser committee meeting, and my nephew's dental appointment, and they just couldn't make it. Saying it aloud made it sound even more pathetic. Jason was quiet for a moment. That doesn't sound like the Margaret and Richard I remember. They've changed. Or maybe I never saw them clearly. I turned toward him slightly, careful of my bandaged head. After Amber had kids, everything shifted. Emma and Jackson became the center of the family universe. Which is normal, I guess. Kids should be important. But so should you, Jason said, his voice gentle but firm. Especially after brain surgery. The simple validation broke something open inside me. Words poured out about the gradual distance that had grown, how my accomplishments were acknowledged, but never celebrated, how holiday conversations revolved around the grandchildren, how my parents had retired early to help with Amber's kids while telling me they couldn't visit Chicago, because it was too much trouble. I kept making excuses for them, I admitted. They are busy with the kids. Amber needs more support as a mother. My job keeps me too occupied for regular visits anyway. But I really believed, that when something serious happened, they'd be there. Jason listened without interruption, his face thoughtful. When I finally fell silent, he waited a moment before responding. Family dynamics are complicated, he said carefully. And I only know your side. But Haley, you deserve better than being the afterthought. Especially today. We turned onto my street, and I directed him to my building. He pulled into a visitor spot, and came around to help me out of the car. The world tilted alarmingly when I stood, and Jason's arm immediately went around my waist, steadying me. I've got you, he said quietly. Those 3 words, so simple, carried me through the lobby, into the elevator, and down the hall to my apartment door. My hands trembled too much to work the key, so Jason gently took it and opened the door for me. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning, neat, but with signs of my anxious preparation. Post-it notes with reminders covered the refrigerator. Prescription bottles for post-surgery were lined up on the counter. A stack of easy-to-read books sat by the couch alongside extra pillows and blankets. You'd planned for everything, Jason observed, setting down my bag. Everything except having no one to help me, I said, the bitterness slipping through. Jason guided me to the couch, helping me sit and arranging pillows to support my head comfortably. Without asking, he filled a glass with water, found my pain medication among the discharge papers, and brought it to me. The nurse said you should take these now, before the hospital meds wear off completely. I swallowed the pills gratefully, suddenly aware of how the pain was intensifying. Jason moved around my apartment with surprising ease, finding my phone charger, and plugging in my nearly dead phone, adjusting the blinds to reduce the glare, locating a light blanket in the hall closet. You don't have to do all this, I protested weakly. I know I don't have to. He sat on the coffee table across from me, our knees almost touching. Haley, what's the plan here? The nurse said someone should stay with you tonight. I hadn't thought that far ahead. In my desperation at the hospital, I'd only focused on getting home. I'll be fine. I can set alarms to wake up and check myself. Jason's expression made it clear what he thought of that idea. I'm staying. I can take the couch. Jason, you've already done so much. I'm staying, he repeated firmly. Unless you're uncomfortable with me being here. In that case, we need to call someone else. There is no one else, I admitted, the reality of my isolation hitting me anew. Jason nodded, decision made. Then I'm staying. Now, have you eaten anything today? I shook my head, immediately regretting the movement as pain spiked through my skull. I'll make something light. The discharge papers said bland foods, right? As Jason moved to the kitchen, I watched him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. Why was he doing this? We hadn't been a part of each other's lives for 5 years. He owed me nothing. Yet here he was, caring for me with more attention and consideration than my own family had shown. While he prepared what turned out to be perfectly buttered toast and chamomile tea, my phone, now charging, began buzzing repeatedly. Text notifications filled the screen. All from my family, all within the last 20 minutes. Everything okay? Jason asked, noticing my focus on the phone. It's them. My family. Suddenly very concerned about where I am. He brought over the toast and tea, setting them on the coffee table. Do you want to talk to them? I stared at the notifications, the anger and hurt swirling inside me. Not right now. That's fair. He sat beside me, careful not to jostle the couch. You should eat something if you can. The toast was perfectly buttered, not too much, not too little, just the way I'd always liked it. Such a small thing, but it struck me that he remembered this detail after 5 years. As I nibbled at the toast, the medication began to take effect, creating a slight floating sensation. Jason seemed to notice the change. Maybe we should get you to bed soon, he suggested. You need real rest. Can we just sit here a little longer? I asked. The thought of being alone in my bedroom, even with Jason in the next room, suddenly seemed unbearable. Of course. We sat in surprisingly comfortable silence as I finished my tea. The initial awkwardness had faded, replaced by something I couldn't quite name, not quite the old familiarity we'd once shared, but something new. Something built on this unexpected bridge between our past and present. Why did we break up? I asked suddenly, the medication loosening my filter. Jason looked surprised, then thoughtful. Because we were young and career-focused. You got the offer in Chicago. I had the fellowship in New York. Neither of us wanted to ask the other to give up their dream. That seems so sensible. Were we always that sensible? He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Not always. Remember the midnight swim in Lake Michigan during finals week? I laughed softly, careful of my head. And the time we drove to Wisconsin just for authentic cheese curds. Or the Halloween party, where we convinced everyone we were famous architects from Finland. The memories flowed easily between us, moments I hadn't allowed myself to revisit in years. Not just the grand gestures or silly adventures, but the quiet moments too, studying together in comfortable silence, cooking simple meals in his tiny apartment, the way he'd always known when I needed space and when I needed closeness. We were good together, I said quietly. We were, he agreed, his voice equally soft. The unspoken question hung between us. What would have happened if we'd made different choices? But that was a question for another day. The medication was pulling me toward sleep, my eyelids growing heavy. I think I need to lie down now, I admitted. Jason helped me to my bedroom, turning down the covers and adjusting pillows to accommodate my bandaged head. He set a glass of water and my medication on the nightstand, along with my phone. I'll be right in the living room if you need anything, he said, turning to leave. And I'll check on you throughout the night, just like the nurse said. Jason. I called as he reached the door. He turned back. Thank you. Not just for picking me up, but for all of this. He smiled, that warm smile I'd once loved waking up to. Get some rest, Haley. We'll figure everything else out tomorrow. As I drifted toward sleep, the pain in my heart began to ease, even as the one in my head persisted. I'd lost something today, the illusion of my family's unconditional support. But I'd found something too, something unexpected and precious. I wasn't yet ready to name what that might be. Morning arrived with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through my bedroom blinds and the distant sounds of movement in my kitchen. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember why someone would be in my apartment. Then the events of yesterday crashed back: the surgery, my family's absence, Jason's rescue. My head throbbed dully, the pain present but manageable. Carefully, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. It was 8:17 a.m., and my screen was flooded with notifications. 14 missed calls. 23 text messages. All from my family. The first messages, starting around 8 p.m. last night, were concerned. Mom, Haley, where are you? The hospital said you checked out. Call me immediately. Dad, your mother is worried sick. Let us know you're okay. Amber, OMG Haley, what's going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out. The tone shifted as the night progressed, concern morphing into anger and accusations. Mom, this is completely irresponsible. We've called the police. Dad, whatever point you're trying to make, this isn't the way to do it. Amber, you're being incredibly selfish right now. Mom is in tears. The most recent messages, from early this morning, had circled back to worried pleading. Mom, Haley, please just let us know you're safe. We love you. Dad, just a text to let us know you're alive. That's all we're asking. The audacity was breathtaking. They had abandoned me after brain surgery, and now they were painting me as the villain for not immediately responding to their belated concern. A light knock at my bedroom door interrupted my thoughts. Haley. Are you awake? Jason's voice was soft, careful not to disturb me if I was still sleeping. Come in. The door opened, and Jason appeared with a mug of what smelled like coffee. He'd clearly been up for a while. His hair was damp from a shower, and he wore yesterday's suit pants with his undershirt. Despite the rumpled appearance, he looked alert and concerned. How are you feeling? He asked, setting the coffee on my nightstand. Like someone operated on my brain yesterday. I attempted a smile, which he returned. But better than I expected. That's good. I checked on you every few hours like the nurse said. You were pretty out of it, but you responded to all my questions. I've got some toast and scrambled eggs ready whenever you feel up to eating. The thoughtfulness of this gesture, having breakfast waiting, contrasted sharply with the demanding messages on my phone. I held up the device. My family has apparently been in panic mode since last night. Jason sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Are you going to call them back? I sighed, wincing at the pain the deep breath caused. I should at least let them know I'm alive before they send a SWAT team. Want privacy? I can step out. No, I said quickly, surprising myself with how much I didn't want him to leave. Stay, please. I typed out a brief message to the family group chat. I'm fine. Home safe. Resting. The response was immediate. My phone rang within seconds, my mother's name flashing on the screen. With a deep breath, I answered, putting it on speaker so I wouldn't have to hold it to my ear. Haley. Thank God. My mother's voice was shrill with relief and lingering anger. We've been worried sick. What were you thinking disappearing like that? The hospital said someone picked you up, but they wouldn't tell us who. We thought you'd been kidnapped. The absurdity of this statement, as if a kidnapper would sign discharge papers, might have been funny under different circumstances. I wasn't kidnapped, Mom. I found someone to pick me up when you all didn't show. We told you we were running late. You couldn't wait a few hours. Jason's expression darkened at this, but he remained silent. The hospital was going to charge me for an unnecessary overnight stay, I explained, trying to keep my voice level. And no, you didn't say you were running late. You said you weren't coming. That's not true. We were always planning to come. After Amber's fundraiser. And Dad taking Jackson to the dentist. And whatever else was more important than being there for me after brain surgery. My mother's voice took on the wounded tone she'd perfected over years of family conflicts. That's not fair, Haley. We had commitments. We can't just drop everything at a moment's notice. It wasn't a moment's notice. I scheduled this surgery 2 weeks ago. I told you multiple times I needed someone there. Well, we're coming now, she declared, changing tactics. Your father and I are already on the road. We'll be there in about an hour. Amber will join us later. The thought of facing all of them, their defensive excuses and attempts to rewrite yesterday's abandonment, was exhausting. But before I could respond, my mother asked the question I'd been waiting for. Who picked you up from the hospital, anyway? I glanced at Jason, who raised an eyebrow, leaving the decision to me. Jason did. A shocked silence followed. Jason. Your ex-boyfriend Jason. The disbelief in her voice was almost comical. Yes. How on earth did he even know about the surgery? I called him when you didn't show up. Another stunned silence. I could practically hear her calculating how this would look to her friends, the family reputation now tarnished by the knowledge that an ex-boyfriend had stepped up when they hadn't. Well, she finally said, her voice tight. That was nice of him. But you should have called us first. I did call you first. Multiple times. You said you couldn't come. We never said we couldn't come. We just couldn't come right at that moment. The gaslighting was so blatant that Jason's eyes widened in disbelief. Mom, I need to rest now. My head is hurting. Of course, of course. We'll be there soon to take care of you. That's not necessary, I said quickly. I have help. What do you mean you have help? Not him. Haley, you can't have an ex-boyfriend staying with you. What will people think? There it was her real concern. Not my well-being, but appearances. I don't care what people think. Jason is helping me, and I'm comfortable with that. This is ridiculous, my mother sputtered. He's taking advantage of the situation. You're vulnerable right now, not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, I interrupted, anger giving strength to my voice. For the first time in years, I'm seeing things exactly as they are. You, Dad, and Amber have made it very clear where I stand in your priorities. Jason dropped everything to help me when my own family wouldn't. So yes, he's staying, and no, I don't want visitors today. You can't be serious. I am. Please don't come today. I'll call you tomorrow when I'm feeling better. Your father will have something to say about this, she threatened. I'm sure he will. Goodbye, Mom. I ended the call before she could respond, then turned off my phone entirely. My hands were shaking. Jason was quiet for a moment. That was intense. That was actually mild for my mother, I said, attempting humor, but hearing the bitterness in my voice. She really tried to make it sound like they were planning to come all along. Classic Margaret Wilson move. Rewrite history to make herself the hero of every story. I pressed my fingers gently against my temples, trying to ease the growing tension. They are still coming, aren't they? Jason shrugged. Probably. Want me to run interference if they show up? The offer touched me deeply. You've already done so much. I can't ask you to get in the middle of my family drama. You're not asking. I'm offering. He stood, straightening his undershirt. But first, breakfast. You need to take your medication with food. While Jason went to prepare breakfast, I slowly made my way to the bathroom, avoiding my reflection in the mirror. I wasn't ready to see the bandages, the evidence of what I'd been through. After using the bathroom and carefully washing my hands and face, I shuffled to the kitchen where Jason had set 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast at my small dining table. Nothing fancy, he said apologetically. I worked with what you had in the fridge. It's perfect. Thank you. We ate in comfortable silence, the simple food exactly what my queasy stomach could handle. The normality of sharing breakfast helped ground me after the emotional storm of my mother's call. What happens when they show up? Jason finally asked, setting down his fork. I don't know. Part of me wants to avoid the confrontation. Part of me feels like it's long overdue. Whatever you decide, I'll support it. I studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity or hidden agenda. There was none. Just the same open honesty I'd always valued in him. Why are you doing all this, Jason? We haven't been in each other's lives for 5 years. He considered the question carefully. When you called yesterday, you sounded so alone. I couldn't just leave you like that. And now? He paused, choosing his words. Now I see how your family is treating you, and I guess I'm just here. For as long as you need me to be. The simplicity of his answer brought tears to my eyes. Before I could respond, a sharp knock at my apartment door made us both turn. That was fast, Jason muttered, standing. Want me to answer? I nodded, not trusting my voice. As Jason moved to the door, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. One way or another, things were about to change. The pounding on my door grew more insistent as Jason approached it. He looked back at me one last time, confirming I wanted him to answer. I nodded again, bracing myself. When the door swung open, my parents nearly tumbled in, clearly not expecting someone else to answer. My father recovered first, his insurance salesman composure quickly reasserting itself. Jason, he said stiffly, extending a hand. It's been a while. Jason shook it with equal formality. Mr. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson. My mother didn't bother with pleasantries. She pushed past Jason, scanning the apartment until her eyes found me at the table. Haley. We were so worried. She rushed over, arms outstretched as if to embrace me, then stopped short at the sight of my bandaged head. Oh my goodness, look at you. I just had brain surgery, Mom. What did you expect? Her face tightened at my tone, but she pressed on with forced cheerfulness. Well, we're here now. We can take over from here, Jason. Thank you for your help, but family should be handling this. Jason didn't move from his position by the door. That's for Haley to decide. My mother's smile became brittle. This is a family matter. Which is why you should have been there yesterday, I said quietly. My father, still by the door, sighed heavily. Haley, can we not do this right now? You've been through a lot. Let's focus on getting you better. I am focusing on getting better. That's why I told you not to come today. And leave you alone with him. My mother gestured dismissively toward Jason. Jason has been nothing but helpful and respectful, I said, my voice gaining strength despite the pain in my head. Which is more than I can say for my family right now. We're trying to help now, my father said, his tone reasonable, as if talking to a difficult client. We can take you back to Milwaukee, where we can properly care for you. I'm not going to Milwaukee. I'm staying in my home, recovering on my own terms. Don't be ridiculous, my mother snapped, her patience evaporating. You can't take care of yourself after brain surgery. And you certainly can't stay here with him. She glanced at Jason with poorly disguised disdain. Before I could respond, another knock came at the still open door. Amber stood there, her perfectly highlighted hair pulled into a ponytail, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. Behind her, her husband Tyler looked uncomfortable, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. Oh my God, Haley. Amber rushed in, her voice at maximum volume despite my obvious wince. We were so worried. The kids made you get well cards. She thrust a folder of crayon drawings at me. Please lower your voice, Jason said calmly. Loud noises can be painful after brain surgery. Amber turned to him, blinking as if just noticing his presence. Jason. What are you doing here? He picked Haley up from the hospital, my mother said before either of us could answer, her tone implying scandal. When no one else would, I added pointedly. An awkward silence fell. Tyler, still hovering by the door, cleared his throat. Maybe we should come back another time. No one asked you, Amber snapped at her husband before turning back to me. Haley, this is crazy. Let us help you. The kids are so excited to take care of Auntie Haley. The thought of Emma and Jackson, ages 7 and 5, taking care of me after brain surgery was almost laughable. Especially since both children were hyperactive and constantly shouting. Amber, I appreciate the thought, but I need quiet and rest right now. We can be quiet, she insisted, though her current volume belied this claim. Mom and Dad can take the kids sometimes. It'll be fine. I glanced at my parents, trying to imagine them suddenly becoming helpful after yesterday's abandonment. My mother was already examining my apartment with a critical eye, no doubt noting every dust particle and unwashed dish. My father had found my TV remote and was checking the sports scores. I think Haley's made her decision clear, Jason said, his voice firm but not confrontational. She's staying here to recover. You're welcome to visit briefly, quietly, and when invited. My mother's face flushed with indignation. Who do you think you are? You have no right to make decisions about our daughter's care. He's not making decisions, I interjected. I am. And I've decided to stay here, in my home, with Jason's help. This is absurd, my mother declared. Richard, say something. My father looked up from the TV, momentarily confused. What? Oh? Haley, be reasonable. Your mother has already set up the guest room for you. Without asking me, I pointed out. We shouldn't have to ask. We're your parents. The increasing volume of their voices sent spikes of pain through my head. I pressed my fingers to my temples, closing my eyes briefly. Jason noticed immediately. I think Haley needs to rest now, he said, moving to stand beside me. Perhaps you could come back tomorrow for a short visit. We're not leaving her with you, my mother declared, as if Jason was some kind of threat rather than the only person who had actually helped me. The tension in the room was becoming unbearable when another knock at the door broke through. We all turned to see a delivery person holding a large paper bag. Food delivery for Bennett, he called. Jason excused himself to accept the delivery, returning with a bag that smelled deliciously of soup and fresh bread. I ordered some food from that place you always liked on Clark Street, he explained to me. Their chicken soup and sourdough. Thought it might be easier than toast for lunch. The thoughtfulness of this gesture, remembering my favorite comfort food from 5 years ago, ordering it in advance, so I wouldn't have to worry about lunch, stood in stark contrast to my family's chaotic, self-centered invasion of my space. You ordered food. My mother asked incredulously, as if this was somehow inappropriate. Haley needs home-cooked meals, not restaurant food. Did you bring home-cooked meals? Jason asked mildly. My mother flustered. Well, no, but we just arrived. We were going to stop at the grocery store after getting settled. After taking me to Milwaukee, I finished for her. It's what's best for you. The ridiculousness of the situation suddenly struck me. My family had abandoned me during a medical crisis, then shown up unannounced and uninvited to criticize the one person who had actually helped me. What's best for me, I said slowly, my voice trembling with emotion, is having people around who actually put me first. Not as an afterthought. Not when it's convenient. Not after Amber's fundraiser or Jackson's dental appointment, or whatever else you decided was more important than being there after my brain surgery. That's not fair. Amber protested. The fundraiser was important. I'm the committee chair. And my brain surgery wasn't important. Of course it was. But the doctors said it was routine. It was brain surgery. My voice rose despite the pain it caused. They cut open my skull. There's nothing routine about that. Haley, you're being dramatic, my mother said dismissively. The doctors wouldn't have discharged you if it was serious. Something snapped inside me. Years of being overlooked, of making excuses for their behavior, of accepting my place as the family afterthought that all crystallized in that moment. Get out, I said quietly. What? My mother looked shocked. Get out of my apartment. All of you. Now. Haley, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, I interrupted. Yesterday made things very clear. When I really needed you, all of you, you chose other priorities. That's fine. That's your right. But you don't get to waltz in here now and act like I'm being unreasonable for not wanting your help. Help that comes with criticism, judgment, and zero respect for my wishes. We're your family, my father said, as if that single fact should override everything else. Yes, you are. And I love you. But right now, I need you to leave. And leave you with him. My mother gestured angrily toward Jason. Jason has shown me more consideration in the last 24 hours than you have in years. So yes, I'm staying with him. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face cycled through shock, hurt, and anger. My father looked uncomfortable but resigned. Amber seemed on the verge of tears. If that's how you feel, my mother finally said, her voice brittle, then we'll go. But don't come crying to us when you realize your mistake. The only mistake I made was expecting you to be there when I needed you most, I replied quietly. One by one, they filed out, my father with an awkward pat on my shoulder, Amber with a tearful backward glance, my mother with rigid dignity. Tyler, who hadn't said a word the entire time, gave me a surprisingly sympathetic nod as he closed the door behind them. When they were gone, the apartment felt suddenly larger, the air lighter. Jason stood quietly nearby, neither celebrating the confrontation nor trying to minimize it. Are you okay? He asked simply. I wasn't sure how to answer. Physically, my head was pounding. Emotionally, I felt both drained and somehow liberated. I don't know, I admitted. That was a lot. It was, he agreed. But for what it's worth, I think you handled it beautifully. Really? Because I feel like I just nuked my entire family relationship. He brought over the bag of soup and bread, setting it on the coffee table. You set boundaries. That's not the same as ending relationships. It might be, with my family. Then maybe that tells you something important. I let him help me to the couch, where he arranged pillows behind me and spread a light blanket over my legs. The simple care in these gestures brought tears to my eyes. Why couldn't they just be there? I whispered, the question that had been haunting me since yesterday. Why was it so hard for them to show up when I needed them? Jason sat beside me, his presence steady and comforting. I don't know, Haley. Some people can't give what they don't have. But they are my family. Family is supposed to be about love and support, not just blood. He hesitated, then added, sometimes the people who truly care for us aren't the ones we're related to. As he served the soup into bowls, the aroma bringing back memories of late-night study sessions and Sunday afternoons in his apartment, I considered his words. The family I'd been born into had failed me when I needed them most. But Jason, who had no obligation to me whatsoever, had stepped up without hesitation. Jason, I said as he handed me a bowl of soup. Thank you. Not just for yesterday, but for today. For all of this. He smiled, that warm smile that had once been the highlight of my days. You'd have done the same for me. I would have, I realized. And in that moment, something shifted between us, not quite a return to what we'd been, but the possibility of something new. Something potentially stronger, built on a foundation of who we'd become in the years apart. As we ate our soup in comfortable silence, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time since waking up alone in that hospital room, I felt like whatever came next, I wouldn't have to face it alone. 6 months can change everything, or nothing at all. In my case, it changed almost everything. The physical recovery from brain surgery progressed exactly as Dr. Abrams had predicted. 6 weeks of limited activity, careful monitoring, and regular checkups. Gradual return to normal activities by month 3. Final all-clear scan at month 6, showing no remaining tumor tissue and healthy brain function. The emotional recovery followed a different timeline altogether. 2 weeks after my family's dramatic exit from my apartment, my mother called. The conversation was stiff, her apology clearly rehearsed and focused more on how my overreaction had hurt them than on their failure to be there for me. Still, it was a start. My father sent an email a few days later, more genuine in its contrition, acknowledging that they had dropped the ball and asking for a chance to make things right. Amber texted regularly, mostly pictures of the kids with get well messages, avoiding any mention of the conflict. I responded to all of them with polite appreciation, but maintained the boundaries I'd established. No visits unless invited. No unsolicited advice about my recovery. No pressure to resume our old patterns of interaction. My therapist, a recommendation from Dr. Abrams that turned out to be as important to my recovery as any medication, helped me navigate this new terrain. Families have patterns that can take a lifetime to establish, Dr. Winters explained during one of our weekly sessions. When one member changes the pattern, it creates discomfort for everyone. Your family is experiencing that discomfort now. So I should just go back to the way things were? I asked. Not at all. The question is, what kind of relationship do you want with them going forward? It was a question I pondered often during my recovery. What did I want? Not the old dynamic, certainly the one where I accepted scraps of attention and made excuses for their absence. But complete estrangement didn't feel right either. They were still my family. Despite everything, I loved them. Gradually, we established a new normal. Monthly dinners in Milwaukee, with clear start and end times. Regular phone calls with my parents, focused on meaningful conversation rather than surface updates. Occasional babysitting for Emma and Jackson, not as the forgotten aunt, but as someone whose time and presence were valued. It wasn't perfect. My mother still occasionally slipped into passive-aggressive comments about my independence. My father sometimes reverted to treating my career achievements as curiosities rather than accomplishments. Amber still expected me to accommodate her schedule rather than considering mine. But there was progress. Real conversations. Genuine interest in my life. Small acknowledgements of past patterns and attempts to create healthier ones. The most significant change, however, wasn't in my family relationships at all. It was in my relationship with Jason. After that first turbulent day, he stayed with me for a week, sleeping on my couch, helping with medications, preparing simple meals, and providing quiet companionship. When my physical recovery had progressed enough that I could manage basic self-care, he reluctantly prepared to return to his own apartment. "I can still come by daily," he offered, standing awkwardly by my door with his overnight bag. "Or you could call whenever you need anything." Or, I suggested, surprising myself with my boldness, "You could come for dinner tomorrow night. Not as my caretaker. Just as you." His smile was answer enough. What followed was a careful, deliberate exploration of what we might become to each other. Dinner at my apartment led to lunch at a quiet cafe the following week. Phone calls and texts evolved from recovery updates to deeper conversations about our lives, our work, our dreams. We moved slowly, both acutely aware of our history and cautious about repeating past mistakes. There were long talks about what had gone wrong before, how we'd prioritized careers over relationship, how we'd failed to communicate our deepest fears and needs, how we'd assumed separation was inevitable rather than fighting for what we had. "I never stopped thinking about you," Jason admitted during one such conversation, 3 months after my surgery. We were walking along the lakefront, the early autumn breeze gentle against my now healed scalp. Not actively pining or anything, but you were always the benchmark. Every date I went on, I'd catch myself thinking, "She's not as funny as Haley," or "She doesn't get my jokes like Haley did." I did the same thing, I confessed. It wasn't fair to anyone I dated. Do you think we're being fair now? To ourselves, I mean. Or are we just falling back into something familiar, because of extraordinary circumstances? It was a valid question, one I'd asked myself many times. Was our reconnect ion genuine, or merely a trauma response? Was I clinging to Jason, because he'd been there during my darkest moment? "I think," I said carefully, "that extraordinary circumstances can sometimes reveal ordinary truths. The crisis didn't create something that wasn't there. It just uncovered it." 6 months after my surgery, Jason moved into my apartment. It wasn't a decision we made lightly. We'd discussed every aspect: financial arrangements, space needs, how to maintain individual identities within a shared life. We'd even drafted a ridiculous, but oddly helpful, relationship constitution outlining expectations and commitments. The day he moved in, my family came to help, their way of showing support for this new chapter. My father and Jason assembled furniture with surprising camaraderie. My mother brought a houseplant as a housewarming gift, managing to restrain herself from commenting on our living arrangements before marriage. Amber's kids drew pictures for Uncle Jason that now adorned our refrigerator. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was genuine progress. The tumor that had threatened my life had ultimately given me clarity about what truly mattered and the courage to create a life that honored those priorities. On the evening of my 6-month all-clear scan, Jason and I celebrated with dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first date back in college. As we toasted with sparkling cider, alcohol still being on my approach with caution list, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. When I woke up from surgery and realized no one was coming for me, I felt so alone, I told him. It was like a physical pain on top of everything else. I thought it was the worst moment of my life. "And now?" he asked, his eyes warm in the candlelight. "Now I think it might have been the best," I admitted. Not the abandonment itself, but what it showed me. Who it brought back to me. I'm glad I answered that call, he said simply. Sometimes the worst moments show us who truly cares, I mused. And sometimes losing what you thought you needed makes room for what you truly deserve. Later that night, as we walked hand in hand along the same lakeshore path we'd strolled as college students, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the twisted path that had led us here. The surgery that had removed more than just a tumor, it had excised the blindness that had kept me accepting less than I deserved from the people who claimed to love me. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest. Who puts your needs before their convenience. Who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal these truths. Sometimes you have to lose your way to find your path. And sometimes, the person who picks you up when everyone else leaves becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Have you ever experienced a moment of crisis that revealed who truly cared about you? Or reconnected with someone from your past at exactly the right moment? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'm grateful for each and every one of you.